Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you a book review of The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. So before we get started, I really quickly wanted to say that I received a copy of this book from the publisher in exchange for an honest review. This, however, does not impact my opinion on the book whatsoever. This is also going to be a spoiler-free review. If you don't want to know anything about the plot and the characters and stuff like that, I would maybe read this book and then come back, because I am going to dig into some of those elements, but this is going to be, as far as I can tell, a spoiler-free review. So The Mask of Mirrors is a book I was so excited for. When I first heard about it, I was totally sold. Not only is this cover lovely, I love it so much, but it's also a sort of con story, and I love like a heist or con artist stories, anything like that, and I think they're really hard to pull off really successfully, so I was very excited about this. Also, M.A. Carrick is the pen name for two authors. We have Marie Brennan, who is someone I've heard amazing things about and I've heard I would absolutely love. She writes the Memoirs of Lady Trent series, and Alice Helms, who is someone that I have not heard of before. So I was really excited to dive into this, discover a couple of new authors, and while there were a lot of elements of this book that I absolutely loved, I ultimately have kind of mixed feelings on The Mask of Mirrors. So this is an extremely long book. This is about 650 pages, and I think my main gripe with this book is it could have been so much shorter. I love a long book, but I'm really picky with sort of when books should be long and when books really could have been trimmed down, and I really do think this one could have been a lot shorter. So sort of at the core of this story, and it gets really complicated, which we'll talk about in a minute, we have a character named Wren. Wren is a young woman who is born on the streets of this city, and she is now back, and she is disguising herself as the long-lost niece of this noble household in order to sort of con her way onto the family register, kind of be adopted in, and basically live off of their wealth. Now, this house is very much in decline, but that doesn't really matter because it's still way more money than she would have otherwise. So it's she and her sort of sister, Tess, who's posing as her maid slash seamstress, and her storyline of her trying to sort of infiltrate this house is amazing. The actual con part of this book is absolutely amazing. So she's one of those people who, she's really skilled at lying to people and sort of thinking on her feet. So she basically storms into society and takes society just sort of by the throat, and they all love her. She's this sort of fascinating new woman. Her sort of mother was this sort of beautiful young woman who sort of ran off and has never been seen again. So that part was amazing. So as Wren is sort of doing her thing, we also learn that there's something mysterious going on here. There's some kind of magic that is sort of taking the children of the city, the poor children of the city. They cannot sleep, and they basically they die and they disappear. So that's maybe like half the story. Maybe a little bit less than half the story. The rest of it is all these different convoluted plot lines that come together. So we have, I think I saw someone on Goodreads say there are 52 characters in the dramatis personae thing at the end, which wouldn't surprise me. There are so many characters. They all have family names, and they have, you know, sort of nicknames, and Wren goes by multiple different names for sort of the different characters she's playing as she's infiltrating this household, and I thought that that sort of added its own layer of confusion, but we have these other storylines and points of view that have their own kind of thing going on. So for example, we have a character who is a member of the police force. He, sort of like Wren, was born to sort of the original people who lived in the city. There's a colonization storyline here as well, and he's now working for the colonizers as part of their police force. So he has this kind of duality going on, and he's doing some investigating. Then we have this character named Varga, who's fabulous and amazing. He's this crime lord. He has his own thing going on. Then we have this character called the Rook, who's kind of almost like a Robin Hood type character. He defends the poor. He goes after the nobility. So that's its own storyline, and there's so much here. I feel like this book contains the plots for like 5 or 6 different stories, which is awesome, but I feel like a lot of those could have been trimmed out, and honestly we wouldn't have lost that much here. So it was too much. It was really, really overwhelming. I also found the pacing of this book to be quite slow. I started this in early January and I just finished it tonight, which is the 15th of February. And I'm not the fastest reader in the world, but I'm a pretty speedy reader. And as I said, I love a long book, but this had some incredible bits that were super, super fast paced. There's some really exciting things that happen, especially in the second half of the book. And just the rest of it was really, really slow paced for me. And again, I don't mind a slow paced book, but there was something about this where I think because I had a disconnect with the story, because there were so many different things going on, it was so overly complicated when it absolutely did not need to be. I think that caused that disconnect with me, and I just wasn't really feeling like picking it up as much as I should have, which is really, really a shame. I'm going to say one more negative thing before I go into the good things, because there were a lot of really amazing things about this book, and I think a lot of you guys would really enjoy this, so bear with me. The last thing that I thought really, really sort of hindered this book for me was the magic. There are lots of different kinds of magic. There's the sort of dream world and sort of the magic of the people who originally lived in this city and sort of their beliefs, which was really cool and I really, really liked. But there was this other kind of magic. It's like an inscription type magic, where you sort of basically draw big circle and then lots of little things inside of it, and that sort of does a certain thing that you want it to do. And that particular kind of magic becomes much more important in the second half of the book, and I found that because we didn't learn a lot about it in the first half, there were lots of opportunities to kind of explain a little bit more what was going on. By the time we got to the bits where it was important, for example, you know, if, say, you know, there are limitations to this magic and this magic system, but suddenly those limitations are broken, and people are like, oh my god, the limitations are broken, but we don't know that that was a limitation because that was never explained. There are a lot of things in this book, not just with the magic, that when they need to be sort of in the plot, they suddenly get explained then, which I think it would have been much more effective to kind of have those things sort of speckled throughout the book beforehand. And if they were, which I don't think they were, but if they were not done in a way that was quite memorable enough to sort of link them to the things that happen later on. So I found that particular magic really, 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 really confusing. I have been trying to explain this to friends, and I don't know if I'm gonna get it quite right. I don't know if I quite have the words to really explain what I mean, but I think that for me, I don't mind when the magic is really, really complicated if it's either explained really well and I feel like I know what's going on and I know what those limitations are, I know what is possible and what is not possible, and I understand the basics of it, which I didn't really get here. That's great if it's explained. Or if it's like, the magic's complicated, we don't know how this works, it's just a thing. I love that as well. And I feel like this sort of landed somewhere in the middle where it was really complicated and they tried to explain it, but honestly it just didn't make any sense to me. I am someone who's been reading fantasy for almost my entire life and I could not get my head around this. So now I'm moving on to things that I liked. There was a lot that I really, really loved about this book. I thought the characters were fantastic. Ren is amazing, and she definitely kind of borders on maybe some slight Mary Sue territory because she is pretty much perfect. She's really good at everything she does, even especially in the beginning when she stumbles. She always is really good at thinking on her feet, and she's good at sort of reclaiming situations when they could have gone really badly, which of course is amazing if you are someone who is lying about who they actually are and you're running this con. But I do really feel like she did a great job of explaining why Ren would have all of these kinds of skills and why she is so good at all of this stuff. The people who have known her in her past, so like Tess, her sister, for example, all do a really good job of explaining why Ren is the way she is, and I thought that was fabulous. And I loved her point of view. I thought, especially in the first half of the book, she's such a strong character, and I love her so much. I think she's really fabulous and really well written. I love her relationship that she has with her sister and with some of the other people who come up in the book, and I love the way that she is really struggling with coming back to the city and having to confront some aspects of her past. I thought all of that was really well done. Apart from Ren, there are a lot of characters to love. I loved Tess. I wish we got a little bit more of Tess, her sister, because she's so good. She's amazing. I loved Liato, who is the son and heir of this noble house that she is trying to infiltrate. I also loved his mother, who's the head of the household, who's a very sort of mistrustful kind of person, where Liato is very like, he's basically like a golden retriever. He just immediately takes to her and he's like, she's amazing, let's let her in. And his mother's kind of much more sort of cautious and suspicious, and I loved their dynamic. I loved Vargo, who is this criminal overlord, and he's kind of come up from the dregs of the city, and he's sort of that kind of character who is bordering on respectability, but everyone knows that he is this crime lord and they know his roots, so no one really trusts him, and he's in this kind of like weird middle ground. I loved him. I thought he was absolutely amazing. He's probably my favorite character. And there are loads of other characters to absolutely love in this book, and I think that the characters are really the strong point of Mask of Mirrors. I touched on magic earlier, and I know that I kind of like slated some of the magic in this, but there are a couple of things that I really did love. I loved the sort of the dream magic that I mentioned. It's a really kind of eerie, almost trippy kind of magic and experience for the characters who do sort of get into this somehow. And there's also a kind of tarot type magic, so there are card readers, and it's connected to something called pattern, and I absolutely loved that aspect of the book. That was probably my favorite part in terms of kind of magic and world building, was the fact that people really rely on basically tarot, and it's a very real thing to figure out kind of what paths they should take, what's happening, and it does become quite important later on, and I thought that was really cool. So ultimately, I have such mixed feelings about this. Some aspects of this book, 5 out of 5 stars. Loved, absolutely loved, but I think that for me personally, and sort of my reading taste, a lot of this book was dragged down by the fact that it was too long, it was way too complicated, and the pacing was off, and some of it just didn't really make all that much sense to me, unfortunately. So, after some hemming and hawing and thinking really hard, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. There are, again, some aspects 5 out of 5, some aspects 2 out of 5, and I think 3 is kind of a happy middle ground. I do think that a lot of you guys would really enjoy this, but I think it's going to be so incredibly subjective. I can't even sit here and say, if you like X, you will definitely like this book, and if you dislike Y, you will definitely not like this book. I think it's one to just dive into and give a try for yourself. So that is it for my review of The Mask of Mirrors. I would absolutely love to know in the comments below if you've read this book and what you thought of it, whether you agree or disagree with any of the things that I mentioned. I would love to talk about it because I feel like it's such an interesting one. There's a lot to say about this book. I would also love to hear if this is on your TBR as well. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.